Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, 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 everyone. We are so glad you were able to join us today and get a chance to hear about this extremely relevant certificate program that we are debuting. Before we get started, I would like for us to please collectively take a moment of silence to honor our veterans. And I'm going to go ahead and, oops, do this. So we're going to take a second to honor them. Sorry, guys. All right. Thank you so much for doing that. I would also like to ask you if you could please, if you know a veteran, just tell them how much we appreciate them and their service, because we have no idea what they may have encountered in protecting our country. So thank you, thank you. And if we have any on the call, happy Veterans Day. Thank you so much. In our agenda today, I will be introducing everyone, the panelists, myself and Jason, and you will have a chance to meet our instructor, Jason Henricks, and he will be delving into more of what he has encountered in the field of certified fintech. And also he'll talk about his background, the details regarding the program, also frequently asked questions, and you will have an opportunity to ask questions of us throughout the presentation. I just ask that you put your questions in either the chat box or the Q&A section, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. Meet the panelists. That would be us. I am Kelly Harrison, Assistant Director for LSU Professional Development, and I coordinate custom and on-site training. I write and manage encumbered worker training grants, and I also oversee a portfolio of our professional development programs. Jason Henricks, he is our resident expert in all things fintech. He is the instructor for the Certified Fintech Professional Certificate Program, and he is also an instructor for the Graduate School of Banking at LSU. Jason will delve more into his background later in the webinar. What we do here at LSU. So basically, our mission is to meet our non-traditional learners where they are by creating high-demand, workforce-relevant educational opportunities. We offer a variety of learning modalities, from online to on-campus to on-site. And just as an FYI, we transitioned to completely online during COVID. That was back in spring of 2020. However, we are planning to resume our socially distanced face-to-face training this coming spring. So spring 2021, we plan to begin offering our face-to-face courses, socially distanced, of course. We will still have our online as well, though. We offer individual professional development training courses and over 100 online degrees, certificates, and microcredit programs that stack together to help career advancement. And last but not least, you can expect world-class customer service through personal concierge-style learner support throughout your educational journey. So in the previous slide, I mentioned our programs stacked together. So here is a pictorial representation of what that actually means, what stacking looks like. So students can begin their training in any level of this pyramid as long as their prerequisites are met. So for example, depending on the program you've chosen, you can take just-in-time training, like a series of just-in-time trainings that group together to kind of propel you to the next level. So you can take 3 or 4, up to 6 or whatever, management related courses, and those courses put together can help you earn a microcred or certificate. And then it just goes on up from there. Our courses stack on up all the way through graduate degree programs through LSU. Now, what you exactly came to see or hear basically about today is our Certified Fintech Professional Program. It's part of our Business and Management certificate. I'm sorry about that. That's not correct. It's a certificate it is a certificate all on its own, but it's part of our Business and Management portfolio. It's an online non-credit, self-paced program that consists of 3 courses totaling 36 contact hours. You can purchase the program all at once in a bundle for $2,090. That gives you a 30% discount, or you can purchase each individual course at the time that is best for you to take them. So at this point, I will turn the presentation over to Jason so he can talk more about his background and take a deeper dive into the program. Jason?
Fantastic. Thank you, Kelly. So I'm Jason Henricks, very excited to have put this course together in partnership with LSU. I actually teach at their Graduate School of Banking as well as Pacific Coast Banking School and the Graduate School of Banking at the University of Washington. I'm not an academic, however, I come at this from a very practical point. I've spent over 2 decades in financial services and financial technology. And in 2008, I co-founded one of the first challenger banks in the world, which really set off a big wave around fintech and bank partnerships. And then I've also worked very closely with hundreds of banks working on a methodology around how can a bank actually act like an innovator. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, it feels like the world is moving faster and faster. And COVID has only accelerated that. We've seen a bunch of the norms that previously in banking we would have said were impossible, like shifting to digital almost overnight for a lot of our customers, reducing the dependence on the branch, and seeing the amount that can be done with a workforce that actually is going to work from home, using the cloud, using SaaS-based products. And for a lot of banks and bankers, well, that kind of makes your head spin because that's a lot more change in the course of 1 year than many of us have seen in decades. But it really is only beginning to pick up for the first time. Last year alone, over $34 billion was invested in fintech startup companies. And that really is just the tip of the iceberg, though, because we've seen a digital arms race from the incumbents. Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan Chase both say that they are now financial technology companies, not financial service companies. As if that wasn't enough, we're seeing encroachment from the side. Google is partnering with banks to open checking accounts. Apple has a credit card and is one of the biggest payments networks. We're seeing providers of alternative services like Amazon has become a small business lender and a place that people store capital. Even Starbucks, for all intents and purposes, is holding close to $2 billion in deposits based on its rewards program. Oftentimes when we talk to banks, they say, well, that's okay because we're a fast follower. Except that really only works, as my partner JP is fond of saying, if you're actually fast. And let's face it, for most of us as banks, we don't change on the dime. We're more akin to look at how other banks are evolving, which tends to be slowly and barely keeping up there. This course is really designed around how do we actually begin to act like one of these financial technology companies, whether it is a fintech startup or a digitally led bank like a JP Morgan Chase, a Citibank, a digital federal credit union, these banks that have really figured out where digital fits and how can we begin to act like that. And this is applicable for banks of all sizes. We have worked with banks as I think the smallest bank was about 200 million to do this methodology, up to the largest bank we've worked with is 7 trillion based out of the EU. It doesn't matter the size, the way this is broken down is something even an individual can begin to start to work on. And in order to do that, we need to break down some of the myths about what it is to be a fintech. The first, it's not just slapping digital on everything. Digital is important, but some of the most important innovations are what happens behind the scenes. We've seen banks and bankers, individuals find ways to innovate just by changing small parts of their process that doesn't even touch any part of the digital. Which brings me to another myth. It isn't just about technology. In fact, the hard work often starts the day the technology is implemented, if it involves technology. I hear this again and again with banks, especially related to CRM, where they say, CRM didn't work out for us. We didn't see a tremendous ROI. And if you start to unpack the what did you do with the customer relationship management technology you bought, the aha moment for most of them is they may have installed the technology, but they didn't change their behaviors. And a lot of this course will be around how do we actually take these tools and put them to good use to do customer-driven development of solutions. The next myth is really around what I like to call innovation theater. Let's do some things that make us feel more innovative. Do we need to create a lab or put together a Fintech committee, even though that committee, doesn't do much more than meet, but we feel innovative for a time period? Which leads to another myth that I'm fond of, the Fintech petting zoo. Having grown up on a farm, I can tell you, attending the petting zoo, going to the local accelerator, or attending Finovate online can be a source of great ideas, but it's not going to make you a farmer. We actually need to think deeply about the processes we employ to become more innovative. And it needs to be tied to creating real value. This isn't about doing some fluffy experiments and saying, we tried it and it didn't work. At some point, the chief financial officer or even the team working on it will say, we're not seeing a great return on this, and you stop. So innovation efforts, this idea of working as a fintech company that's customer driven and technology enabled, needs to be tied back to your core strategy. That's going to be one of the major themes in the second course, is really around how do you think about strategy in this evolving world. In the first course, the easiest building block really is focused on how do you execute like a fintech. And as I mentioned, you could be an individual beginning to deploy these practices. And it's based on the idea that the way we execute our core business, the business that we understand well today, we understand how to do those things. It really is focused on scalability, reliability, and cost of delivery, right? Fewer mistakes, becoming more efficient. When we talk about innovation, that's really about figuring out new ideas, searching for the unknowns and defining new problems. The emphasis is really on learning. And as I said, individuals, teams, entire banks can focus on developing this as a skill set. Underpinning all of it is this idea that we need to figure out how we can move faster and develop as a second muscle the idea of agility. How can we also change direction? That as we learn, how do we respond to that and evolve? There's no greater lesson of a brand in its inability to evolve than Kodak. Now, often what's missed in the case study here is people assume that Kodak was caught by surprise with digital photography. In reality, it was invented in their labs. Now, they did what most incumbents, would do that are scared of change, and they immediately buried it, slapped NDAs on the inventors, and hoped it would go away. And it worked for about 10 years until others began inventing around digital photography. Now, most people think that they were then sideswiped, and that's why Kodak exists mainly in vintage stores or in PowerPoint presentations on innovation. The reality is Kodak shifted and they invested hundreds of millions of dollars in digital photography once they realized a change was happening. What they failed to do, however, is recognize that the ecosystem and the environment that they're operating in had changed dramatically, and they were trying to apply new technology to outdated business models. Now, you may remember, if you're old enough, that you would get your digital camera from Kodak, and they had a piece of software known as Easy Share that you could upload your photos to. And from there, they'd all be stored in the Easy Share site. And what did they ask you to do? Oh, they incentivized you to make printouts. In fact, you should share those photos with someone. So why don't you get free doubles when you go to the local Duane Reade or Walgreens or Target when you print these out? Now, who can you think of that also has you upload digital memories and share them with other people? Oh, they had a 10-year head start on the likes of Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat, but they were stuck in an old business model. They'd embraced new tools finally, but they were not adapting to what the ecosystem was going to look like for the future. This is really at the heart of course 2. How do you actually think about strategy and take those tools developed in course 1 in order to go execute on those? And in course 3, we actually talk about what those new technologies are that give you the underpinnings. The expectation is you're not going to be an expert in any one of those, but you have a broad enough understanding at the end of course 3 that you understand why they're important and where they fit into the world. Because let's face it, the world is not going to slow down. In fact, it's going to move faster and faster, and it's going to be harder and harder to catch up. So a few things set this course apart. These are not techniques developed by an academic. As I said, we've implemented this with over hundreds of banks of all sizes. It's being taught in the leading graduate schools of banking. I lead a consortium of community banks known as Alloy Labs. We're over 40 banks. By combined assets, we would be a top 20 bank that use these methodologies. It's always being adapted, improved, and implemented, and we can see the results. The course is littered with stories, real stories about how banks have embraced change and made a difference. And one other thing that is different is I brought in thought leaders from across the industry: Brett King, Chris Skinner, Theodore Lau, Jim Maroos, and they all created exclusive content for this course to give you the strategic context about why these principles are important, where financial technology fits into banking, and their view of the future of financial services. Kelly, I don't know if you had other questions or FAQs that you wanted to make sure we brought up.
Absolutely, I sure do. Let me share my screen again. Right here. Okay. So here are the learning outcomes for the course. I think Jason, did you go over these in your overview of the program, or do I need to?
I think they're worth showing up on the screen. I talked about what you get out of the course, but these are the formal learning outcomes established here.
Okay, yeah. So these, by the time you finish the curriculum, these are the outcomes that you should have gained insight on. So discussing the changing role of technology in banking is one in the first course. In the second course, one is build an innovation portfolio that maps to your new strategy. And then in the third course, you describe the basic function of each emerging technology. And you can see the other ones on the screen. So I won't read through all of them, but here it is and laid out for you visually. So here's our career outlook. Basically, no matter where you are in the industry, here's what you can expect. If you are a C-suite or another executive, this program will allow you to have conversations with your board and your management team and about how to respond to the bank displacement by Fintech. If you're an emerging leader, this program gives you tangible, practical skills that you can use to lead cross-functional teams and in product-led, technology-enabled way. And if you are new to the financial world, this course basically helps you dive headfirst into the industry and understand the way it's working. Like I mentioned earlier, well, those are the course listings, but the cost for the course, like each individual course is $9.95 if you decide to enroll one course at a time. If you do purchase the entire program at once, you are eligible for a 30% discount, which would make the total of the program $2,090. So if you purchase the program in the bundle, then you have 4 months from the date of your enrollment purchase to complete the entire program. However, each individual course, you only have 4 weeks to complete each course from your start date of that particular course. If you need an extension of an individual course for whatever reason, it's $95 for an additional week. If you need an extension for the entire program, then it's $195, and that allows you an additional month to complete. Once you successfully complete, you will receive what we call a digital badge. It's basically a portable representation of your accomplishments with the skill set that you've learned in completing the course. You can share them across many social media platforms and electronically to kind of keep everything in one place and be portable for everyone who needs to see it to be able to see it. Quick reference for you. So a couple of frequently asked questions that we have encountered along the way is, what is the refund policy? As long as you request your refund within 7 days of enrolling in the program or the course, and as long as none of the content has been accessed, we can issue you a refund. You would have to submit it to answers@outreach.lsu.edu. And one of the other common questions is, how do I interact with my instructor if the program is self-paced? Well, there is no live interaction. However, you will have access to the instructor's email address. There will be forums within the content, so you can put questions, have discussions with other individuals as they read them. And with the instructor. So it's not live interaction, but you do have access. And you can also set up Zoom meetings or telephone conferences with your instructor if you need be. Hence, Jason. So at this time, I want to ask if you guys have any questions regarding everything you've heard today. Oh, yes. Okay. So we have something in Q&A, and that question is for you, Jason. It says, what would you say is the single greatest selling point for the certificate to a local or regional bank when investing in associates for learning and development? Thank you.
Great question, Anthony. That I think the greatest single selling point about this is it's an easy on-ramp to beginning to become more innovative and to think more like a fintech. This is not an all or none, that by taking this course, you can implement in small pieces what needs to happen to change. We hear this time and time again from banks, and Lisa won't call you out to answer, but I'm thinking about the roundtable last week that I did for American Bankers Association. But we hear from banks, it's like, we're too small to innovate, or from the bigger banks, we're too scared to innovate. What if we make a change and it goes wrong? This is a way to start and to begin to develop that as a muscle. I would say, there is no silver bullet for every bank, because every bank should be different. They come from a different place. They should serve different customers. They should actually have different strategies. This will give you the toolkit to begin to implement that. It's very low risk in that regard to go through the course and to begin to make some of those changes.
Thanks for answering that. What format is the majority of the learning? Textbook reading, video lecture, podcasts?
So we really work to mix it up, that you're not going to just sit and stare at a video screen. You'll hear my voice, probably more than you should. But mixed up a series of podcasts, a bunch of exclusive content, as I mentioned, that we reference as one of the co-hosts of the Breaking Banks podcast. Have a phenomenal array of guests that have been on the show that I've tapped to come in and say, specific to this topical area, can you opine? But also really mix that up with some reading, as well as some slides and commentary, both from talks that I give, but also a lot of things developed just for this course.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, how do I enroll? So I can answer that question. Actually, what I will do is put in the Q&A as well as in the chat. I will put in the link to enroll. It's basically, I'll put in the link to enroll the program as well as the course. Just give me 1 second to pull it up for you. Give me 1 second here. Ha, right here. Where are you guys? There you go. Okay. I have put it in there, and I will also put it in. You just follow the link to enroll in the program. Let's see. And if you guys have any questions or get stuck in the enrollment process, I am putting my email address in the chat so you can shoot me an email if you have any questions regarding the enrollment process.
Anthony,
Here's another one. Yeah.
Your
Oh, I'm
next
sorry.
question.
Mhm.
One of the things that I thought would be useful in this course is chunked it up in such a way that it is about 12 hours per course of lecture / class time, but done in call it snack size versions of it that you don't have to like dedicate yourself to. I need an hour to get through a module. On average, you should find each one of those modules breaks down into a chapter of 20 to 30 minutes that allows you, to block it off during the day, whether it's being able to, listen during a lunch hour or, read. Well, no one commutes anymore, but if you were commuting, you would be able to, read if you were, on public transportation or listen during that time period. But it would be, fair to say that 12 hours of lecture / class time is easily broken down.
And Jason was answering the question of basically how long does it require the amount of time each week to gain an adequate understanding of the material? That's the question Jason just answered. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for Jason or myself? Anthony says, sounds flexible. Is there an assessment at the end or test to determine your understanding?
Yes, Anthony,
yes.
there are tests. I would say the hardest part of this from my perspective is learning to be a good test writer. But they are very, straightforward, and I really trying to structure it in such a way that it's a practical test, that, some of it does test for learning, but also some reflections in some cases are things that should be able to come straight back to work for you. That you say, I was writing or working on this topic and it's germane to my day-to-day job and will help me do that better.
Yeah, what we try to do in all of our programs and courses that we offer is that we tend to use an academic approach in the context portion, but then write it in such a way or deliver it in such a way that it has practical applicability for anyone in the workforce. Any other? Oh, yes, perfect. It does sound practical. Can't wait to take the course at the beginning of the year. Yay, Anthony.
Look forward to interacting with you, Anthony.
Thank you so much. Any other questions, comments? All right. Well, we are so happy you joined us today, took the time out of your day to listen to what we're bringing to the forefront. And if you have any questions, please reach out. I put my email in the chat. Um, and we look forward to you being a part of the LSU family. So thank you so much.